We live in a post-ironic nightmare world where the sum of a game is boiled down into a dismissive tagline to fulfill the quota of a cheap joke or bear some petty grudge against an auteur game developer for doing what they do best. Being a tad on the pretentious side. What a crime. Gamers in 2014. Kojima is a genius for making this subversive walking simulator. Gamers in 2019. Kojima is a hack for making this subversive walking simulator. Why is it like everyone's surprised that Kojima is a hack? It's not like he's never made a poorly written sci-fi that hits you over the head with warnings about man's symbiotic relationship with technology, bringing us closer and closer to Judgment Day. None of this shit is new. He's been writing somewhat prophetic storylines since day one when he was working on The Antarctic Adventure, which warns mankind about the horrors of global cooling and the eventual penguin takeover. They're gonna outbreed us if we don't act quickly. Start spraying your Lysol in the sky and show those fuckers who's boss. Speaking of polarizing, there are people out there that love to shit on this game and others who love the shit out of this game. Now, I don't want to get lost in the weeds of who was right and who was wrong about their Death Stranding take, as polarizing reactions are a foregone conclusion when you're dealing with a game that's experimental in nature. And when something like that comes out during a time where there's hyper-reactionaries that built their entire fucking careers off of being the world's fattest contrarian, I mean biggest contrarian, you begin to wonder how far they got into the video game before they laid down their mighty judgment upon it, or if they just hated it on the virtue of it being a walking simulator, because of course they would hate anything that involved physical activity.
You're nothing but a common criminal, and that's the only way people will ever remember you. Oh, damn! I'm an ox!
I don't even believe you finished it. Show me your fucking porter card and then we'll talk. You didn't beat the game. Show me your trophy percentage. How close are you to plat? How close are you to plat? Show me your trophies before I'm even listening to you right now. If I have to hear another brain dead take about this game from people who didn't even play it, I'm gonna end it all. I'm gonna end it all. And go back to teaching or something. They'll have me back, right? Look, I'm willing to put all that shit to the side because, quite frankly, it's expected at this point. And I just want a positive vibes kind of video. I'm not even to trash Death Stranding, and I'm certainly not gonna put it up on a pedestal calling it Kojima's flawed masterpiece. I am somewhere in between on my thoughts on this one. Now, I'm well aware we're dealing with a game that doesn't have much in the way of mass appeal on the surface, and if you try to describe the elements that you thought were interesting about it at the water cooler at work, your coworkers might report you to HR. Yeah, I've been playing this game where you're this thing called a repatriate. You're somewhat like an immortal, like you can go between this place called the beach in real life, and there's a bridge between it. It's called a BB. Yeah, it's a baby that's connected to you via this mechanical umbilical cord, and it acts as a bridge between both the worlds of the living and the dead, and it exists in somewhat of a Schrodinger's box sort of state of, is it alive, is it dead? And in this world, when people die, their bodies turn into nukes, and your mom, she's the president of the United States, but she's dying, and one of her final requests is for you, Sam Porter Bridges, played by Norman Reedus of Walking Dead and Blade 2 fame, to carry some dog tags called Cupid across the West and connect all the United Cities of America together on the Chiralium network, which is powered by gold dust from ghosts, to unfuck the world. Okay. Is it any fun? Should I pick it up? No, it's not fun in the slightest. In fact, it's a brand new genre. It's called anti-fun. Kojima just came up with it. It's a long, brutal, grueling slog with not many rewards in between, but about 60 hours in, it becomes one of the best games I've ever played. But you really gotta stick it out. Anti-fun is the new fun. Don't you know anything? You plebeian shit for brains? Now get out of the way, I'm thirsty. Death Stranding is going to be one of those games that I have a hard time recommending to just about anyone. It's built around a slow progression towards one major goal, and the game starts you off with limited tools, abilities, and resources at your disposal to deal with everything the game throws at you. Granted, the initial start of the game is somewhat slow and agonizing. In many ways, you feel like an infant learning to walk. Personally, I live for this kind of alienating experience experience in video games. It reminds me of the games of Fumito Ueda, the creator of Shadow of the Colossus. You're thrown into these lone, isolated worlds where there's evidence of civilization once existing, now overcome by nature. And the developers put forth an initial learning curve as a hurdle for you to overcome. And those that are more persistent will sit down and gradually begin to understand each mechanic, each tool in your belt, and how they belong as a piece of the greater puzzle laid out before them. You have to keep in mind that starting out, you're in for a rough time because Sam is an amateur porter at this stage in the game. In the beginning, he can only carry a few items at a time. His footing isn't the best and he'll be tripping over shit. He doesn't have a lot of options when it comes to dealing with the BTs, so early on he'll be bottlenecked into stealthing by all these BTs to get from point A to point B. You're not familiar with the lay of the land, so you gotta resort to drawing these straight line point by point maps. You spend a pretty long stretch of the game just relying on ladders and ropes, and you're not given a vehicle for some time. The rain in the game is called timefall, which rapidly ages some things but not others, and mostly wears down your cargo, which affects your porter grade at the end. So you gotta carry some repair spray to patch things up. Your stamina's running out, so you're chugging Monster Energy drink from a canteen or taking a nap in the middle of a field. Oh, your stride was too brisk and now you've upset the baby. Time to calm him down. Is there any room left for fun in all this micromanaging? What kind of warped masochist with fucked up brain mechanics would like this kind of game? Sam, fair use man here. I'm calling to confirm the details about my mental state. It's true, I was cursed with fucked up brain mechanics, or FBM for short. Because of my FBM, my brain interprets tedium and annoyance as fun. Death Stranding is a game all about delayed gratification, or DG for short. Because of my FBM, I find comfort in DG, which in turn makes DS my GOTY. Fair use man out. Okay, I should probably mention the whole BT thing. BTs are like lost souls stuck on Earth that haven't passed on to the beach or the afterlife. Occasionally, Sam will enter what they call a chiral dense area, which in turn means it's BT territory. In most cases, BTs are invisible to the living, unless of course you have like 7th level dooms, which I'm not even gonna bother getting into. So that's where BB comes in. By connecting BB to the Audra deck, Sam can see faint outlines of the BTs in the area. BTs can detect noise, touch, and breath. So early on, Sam will have to hold his breath and tiptoe through an area so he doesn't startle a BT. If Sam does bump into a BT, they'll create a black tar pit where multiple bodies will rise up and try to drag Sam down to cause a void out. If Sam gets drug, it summons a giant BT, and then it turns into a boss fight where you have a couple of options. You can either try to go toe-to-toe with the boss by throwing hematic grenades made out of Sam's blood or other body excrements.
Another of our new EX grenades, the number 1. So named because it contains a vaporized extract formulated from your urine.
Or you can run to the very edge of the tar pit by hopping across all the muck and random buildings that populate throughout to reach the edge and bring out the sunlight. Starting off, your first inclination might be to take the path of least resistance and tiptoe by all the BTs. But I'm kind of an impatient guy, so I would deliberately summon the boss, take him out, and then as a bonus, the boss will dump a whole bunch of Chiralium crystals, which are used for crafting. So not only do you get a clear area to explore, but you get bonus crystals on top of it. Win-win scenario. Although a lot of the BT encounters suck, they do get more manageable later on when Mama gives you umbilical cord cutters, which allows you to tiptoe around and yank a BT out of the air by the umbilical cord, cut it, and send them straight to the beach. It made navigating these areas a hell of a lot easier. There are also also a few BT boss fights sprinkled throughout the game, but they're nothing to write home about. They mostly boil down to run away or shoot the shit till it dies. They're more spectacle than strategy. You know what they say, misery loves company, and that's what Death Stranding's all about. The central thesis of Death Stranding is about connecting the world together for the sake of the story and for the ambient Souls-like multiplayer aspects, wherein you indirectly aid other players by means of helpful or unhelpful messages, a feedback system based on Facebook likes, and structures such as ladders, storage containers, and bridges from other players that populate in your world. Now, in order for you to see other players' structures and packages in your game world, one, you gotta be connected online, otherwise you'll just be left with NPC structures and packages, and two, the area in which you're exploring has to be connected to the chiral network, which means your first trek through an area might be a very unpleasant one without the assistance of other players. That's just the nature of Death Stranding. First, it makes you do some very unpleasant missions that have absolutely no fun involved with them. Some missions will be short and to the point, and others will wear out their welcome from being way too long. However, after you've connected an area to the chiral network, that's when the streamlining begins. Suddenly, you have a whole plethora of shortcuts, or maybe you'll get a new tool or vehicle that'll make traversing the rough, unpaved plains a little bit easier the next time around. While the walking simulator moniker is somewhat warranted, I would argue that the core mechanics of Death Stranding are more to do with building efficient systems to make yours and other players' experiences a bit more enjoyable. I will admit, it took a long time for this game to hook me. Now, story-wise, I was interested from the get-go because I knew I was in for some weird shit. But gameplay-wise, I wasn't exactly sold on Death Stranding until I paved my first road. Now you might be wondering, what's the big deal? It's just a road. Let me explain. The process of building a road in Death Stranding is an all-encompassing one. First, you gotta gather enough materials to put into the auto paver, which will generate a chunk of the road for you. So you can gather materials by finding them on the ground or by raiding mule camps, which are these package-obsessed raiders. I don't know, they're not really that important to the plot. Anyway, you go through their camp, you knock them the fuck out through punching them, tying them up, or using cool gadgets like this bola gun to bind them. You see, in Death Stranding, you don't want to take out any living creature by lethal means, otherwise the body will turn into a BT, and that's no good. You're kind of railroaded into doing no harm. That's not to say there isn't a lethal option to dispatch enemies, it's just the act of killing someone feels like a major detriment to the player, as Kojima will come down with his heavy hand of punishment and forces you to clean up your own mess.
Sam, looks like you've got a body on your hands. Doesn't matter how it happened, you can't ignore it. And if you're directly responsible, all the more reason to clean it up. Any corpse left alone will eventually go necro and pop a BT.
For every person you kill, he makes you zip up their body, strap it to your back, and walk it to the nearest incinerator. I understand what he was trying to go for, but the do no harm message is implemented rather inconsistently. I mean, come on, I can drive this cargo truck at full speed into this mule, and it only knocks them unconscious. And don't even get me started with this collision detection here. It's downright sloppy to say the least. The combat system feels amateur in comparison to Metal Gear, but even in all of its jankiness, there is still some fun to be had in knocking out a guard, swiping their package, and then using it as a projectile to knock out another guard. The mules typically don't serve as any sort of major threat within the game, but they're a fantastic resource for material gathering. There's a lot of satisfaction from cleaning out their camps. Once done, you load up your back, pack it up into a cargo truck, deliver all the materials to an autopaver, and then they 3D print you a road. The benefits of having a road are as follows. 1, it makes getting from point A to point B a lot smoother, and BTs cannot attack you while you're on the road. 2, roads will not deplete any batteries, which makes long journeys easier. 3, roads are one of the easiest ways to farm likes from other players early on. Anytime a player drives on your road, that's a guaranteed like, which will go to help raising your porter rank, which will in turn allow Sam to carry more objects and traverse rough terrain without stumbling as much. And one final benefit isn't necessarily one for Sam, but more for his delivery bots that he can unlock. The more paved roads you have between your starting point and destination for your bots' deliveries, which will increase their package delivery success rate without breaking shit, which will help streamline your relationship building between all the various cities. Each city has its own set of missions where you've got to either deliver cargo to another city or find and return missing cargo in order to gain a better reputation as a porter. When your reputation with that city rises, you gain a star, up to a total of 5. With each new star comes a beneficial item bestowed to you by the leader of the city. The more relationships you're building, the more useful items you'll unlock. And if you're not dedicating the time to build up these relationships, not only are you missing the point of the entire game,
don't tell me how to play,
but you're making the experience a lot harder on yourself. For example, early into the game, you'll meet an engineer, and as a reward for delivering some packages to him, he'll bestow upon you power legs. Power legs are one of the most useful tools in the entire game. They allow you to carry up to 3 times the amount of cargo on your body at one time. Granted, they're only level 1 power legs, so their battery life runs out fairly quickly, which will mean you'll either have to stick to the roads or find nearby generators to charge up. However, if you continue doing missions for the engineer and building up your relationship, he'll give you power legs level 2 and power legs level 3, both of which will increase the battery life and range on your power legs. My suggestion to you complainers out there, if you find a tool that you like and you get a lot of use out of, then just focus on building up relationships with the people who gave you that tool, so then you can get the superior form of that tool. I saw a couple of reviewers out there that made it through the entire game without using power legs. No wonder you hated this game. I bet it was a miserable fucking time. The flow of the game and how you experience it is all dependent on how much you invest yourself into the world. I hate to harp on the same point, but you need to make connections when you play Death Stranding. It's a miserable experience if you go it alone. And this was all by Kojima's design. He built a positive reinforcement system of likes, which conditions you to build more structures, deliver cargo with care, and leave signs of encouragement to other players. And Kojima wanted everyone to participate. That's why he made a deal with Sony to make Death Stranding one of the very few PlayStation 4 games that doesn't require PlayStation Plus to play online. If you're just going from story mission to story mission and not doing anything to reconnect and redevelop the world around you, then Death Stranding is going to become a nightmare naturalism, and the cold, unforgiving backhand of nature is going to come down upon you and slap the taste of fun out of your mouth. Granted, the ratio of misery to fun is a little unbalanced. It seems like for every 5 grueling deliveries you make, you get one really awesome mission or piece of the great mystery revealed to you. I can't help but think this was all part of Kojima's master ruse, and he was aware of how painful and tedious his game would be for the players in the end. For example, meet Higgs, played by Troy Baker. He acts as one of the main antagonists within Death Stranding, and we as players are left to assume that he is the root cause of all the pain and suffering that everyone has to endure in the world of Death Stranding. And he's kind of a douche. In typical stock bad guy fashion, he unleashes monsters and then he runs away, or he pulls a Bowser and takes off with Princess Peach.
So I'm Mario and you're Princess Peach.
The more we get into the story, the more we learn to hate Higgs. Until finally, Kojima grants us the one bit of vicarious catharsis that comes through beating the absolute shit out of Troy Baker. The conclusion to the Higgs boss fight comes off as another Kojima meta commentary. Just listen to all the stuff Sam is saying.
You walking 10,000
It's probably what's been going through the player's head the entire time. While some people might put the controller down and start clapping, this moment just rubbed me the wrong way. It just came off as a cheap joke that Kojima wrote at the expense of the player's time. It's like, oh, I just spent 60 hours of my time to finally make it to this point, and this is my reward. A callback to one of my favorite Metal Gear boss fights with Revolver Ocelot. This is a great note to end the game on. Thanks, Kojima.
Well, congratulations. You won the game.
And then the game proceeds to go on for another 10 hours.
Too bad you didn't stop shit.
What a genius.
You're such a genius, seriously. I opened my eyes to a whole new world.
As I mentioned, Death Stranding's gonna be a game that I can't recommend to every player. Many people will just walk away from it hating this experience, and I can't blame them. It's not an easy game to enjoy by design. And that's not to say that Death Stranding is a particularly hard game. It's just difficult to start because it's an overwhelming experience. You're dealing with a brand new IP that's sci-fi in nature, and it comes with its whole host of terminology such as Ka, Ha, Dooms, BTs. It has its own set of rules and particular nuances that may come off as strange to the average player. It's nothing like Kojima's ever created before. And this is where I think Kojima differentiates himself from a lot of other developers who left a big studio to strike it out on their own and make a game that tried to recapture the former glory of what they're known for. By no means is the game perfect, but I'd much rather a developer take a risk than just slapdash together an old concept with a different coat of paint. And I guess people are mad because they want the same thing. Well, it's not like he crowdfunded the entire budget for the game from all the fans. He's spending Sony's money. And who gives a shit about Sony's money? Spend all that. All their money is just gonna go to dog shit movies that you're not gonna watch. At least here we get a somewhat decent movie for Sony's dollar. From the opening trailer with naked Norman Reedus on the beach holding a baby, I paused and I thought to myself, what in the Norman Reedus fetus is going on here? Like many, I thought I was being taken on another ruse cruise, and that possibly, just maybe, on the smallest off chance, this could be the continuation of Silent Hills, only repackaged under a new name. No, it didn't end up being anything like Silent Hill, and you know what, that's not such a bad thing. I'm just gonna come out on the record and say that Death Stranding is one of Kojima's most coherent and closed story arcs that he's ever written. Sure, things are a little surreal starting off, but by the end of the game, everything will be spelled out for you in gross and excruciating detail. Yes, I know, Kojima's never been one for brevity, but in one scene in particular, he spares no expense to explain every symbolic or surreal aspect of the game for the player, just in case they had forgotten everything they had seen in the past 60 hours as the credits roll. Despite Kojima's long-windedness in the plot, I would be a liar if I didn't say I found myself emotionally invested into where the story was going. All the characters that you meet have complete story arcs with plenty of background information. In fact, just about every main character has an entire chapter dedicated to them. I don't know what Kojima's secret is, but somehow he got these high-profile actors to come together and give some standout performances. I was particularly impressed with Mads Mikkelsen. I never once expected him to treat a video game storyline with so much dignity.
Baby, we're getting out of here. I promise.
A lot of critics out there complained that Death Stranding was becoming too cinematic and too Hollywood with all the actors that Kojima hired. But if I take a step back and look at the entirety of this project from beginning to end, the entire Death Stranding experience is as far from Hollywood as you can get. Most producers wouldn't put up with Kojima's shit.
Give me back my BB.
I mean, who's gonna hire Grunts McReedus as their leading man in a sci-fi epic? When I think about it, Norman Reedus might be the biggest risk of this entire project. He's not an actor known for his highly emotive qualities. Well, except maybe this one. For the majority of the game, he's stoic and emotionless and seems quite unaffected by all the terrible shit that's happening around him. But the more time we spend with Sam as a character, the more opportunities come for Norman Reedus to really put his acting chops on display. And I gotta give Norman Reedus some major credit where it's due. He spent 3 years of his life dedicated to the Death Stranding project. In fact, he was one of the first people to reach out to Hideo Kojima after his departure from Konami and the cancellation of the PT project. At the time of their meeting, Kojima didn't have a studio to his name, but he pitched an early concept for Death Stranding to Norman, and without skipping a beat, he signed on.
And normal people would say no to that, right? But I asked Norman, would you be in my game? And Norman said, yeah, right away. And I feel so overwhelmed. I'm really thankful to Norman. Thank you.
I don't think Kojima could have picked a more perfect actor for the role of Sam. You gotta have somebody that's gruff and tough, but not too A-list or prideful to where they're not going to get silly on camera for you, and be willing to keep an open mind about this batshit insane script you handed him. Shh. Most of the magic lies in the facial capture technology they created for the game's cutscenes. Hands down, these are some of the most impressive cutscenes I've ever seen come from a video game. Some of the facial captures were so photorealistic that I had a hard time differentiating if what I was seeing was real or CG superimposition. The level of detail in these models kept me invested in a new way. And if Kojima's aim was to get me to connect with the characters on a deeper level through the means of better facial captures, then for the most part, I say job well done. And also there were a couple of examples where it didn't work out so well and we hit the uncanny valley. Look at that gum line. But hands down, there was one actor in particular that stole the entire show for me and gave us the best performance that I've ever seen come out of a video game actor.
We all know what's coming. Why delay the inevitable?
No, not Troy Baker. Never Troy Baker. I'm talking, of course, about the final scene with Die Hardman and this seemingly unknown actor, Tommy Earl Jenkins, putting all the professional celebrity actors to shame.
He remembered who he was. And he forgave me. God! But I don't deserve it, God damn it! There is no atoning for what I've done. God!
Holy shit, that's some good acting. I don't even care what Kojima's next project is. Put Tommy in as the lead role and pay him more of Sony's money. Alright, let's wrap things up. Although it's not the survival horror game that I thought it would be, I'm glad I went into Death Stranding completely blind. And I will admit, the Hideo Kojima factor did play into my decision to check it out in the first place. Names sell games. So don't fool yourself into thinking that anyone would be buying this if this was an Ichijo Takaki game. You don't even know who I'm talking about, the creator of back in 1995. But I think I proved my point. For better or worse, people put Kojima up on a pedestal due to his grand departure from Konami. I guess they were looking for a huge middle finger to Konami, with a game to surpass Metal Gear. But instead, they were the ones who got fucked into trying something experimental for a change.
You're such a genius, seriously. I opened my eyes to a whole new world.
Well, I'm not gonna come out on the record and say it's my favorite game he's ever made. I'm still playing it, and to this point, I've put over 80 hours into it. So that's gotta stand for something, or maybe it's just my FPM. Regardless, I wanna thank y'all for hanging with me this long. Make sure you spam that like button, and I'll see you all next time.